Okay, in these examples, we're going to look for the length, the arc length of each part shown in red. So we have 3 circles we're going to work on. The first one, it's asking us to find this arc measure right here, and it gave us the diameter is 24, and it also told us that a portion of this had an arc measure of 60 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow these steps. First, I'm going to find the circumference. Then I'm going to find the arc measure, which is the degree portion. Then I'm going to set up my proportion, and then I'm going to simplify and solve. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my circumference. And I know my circumference is always equal to diameter times pi. And in this case, since my diameter is 24, I know the circumference is 24 pi. Now the next thing I'm going to do is find my arc measure, which means what is the degrees for the portion I'm looking for? Well, if this is the diameter, which makes a semicircle 180 degrees, if I subtract this portion, I have 180 minus 60, which is equal to 120 degrees. So now I have my circumference, I have my arc measure. Next, I'm going to set up my proportion. Once I'm here, I just need to simplify by cross multiplying and then simplifying. Since the instructions say to leave our answer in terms of pi, I am not going to convert pi to 3.14, but instead I'm going to try and simplify these fractions as much as possible. $120 times 24 is 2,880. And in order to get x by itself, I am going to divide by 360. And since, again, I do not want a decimal, I'm going to try and simplify as much as possible by canceling out the zeros. And then 288 divided by 36 is 8. So I'm left with my arc length being 8 pi. In this next example, we're going to follow the same steps in order to find the arc length of the red portion, which I can see here. First, we're going to find the circumference, then we're going to find the arc measure, set up the proportion, and then simplify and solve. Don't forget, we are leaving our answers in terms of pi. So we're going to simplify, and we're not going to convert to a decimal. So in this one, again, first thing I want to do is find the circumference. So I can see here that my diameter is 23. And I also want to find my arc measure, which I can see that this is a semicircle, so I know it's 180 degrees. From there, I want to set up my proportion, which I'm looking for arc length, so that's going to be my x over my whole circumference, which is 73 pi, equal to the portion of my arc measure over the total. Now again, once you're here, you're just going to set up your proportion and you're going to solve. So I have 360x equals 180 times 23 pi. So 180 times 23 is equal to 4,140 pi. The last step to get x by itself is to divide by 360. And at this point, I'm going to try and simplify as much as possible. First thing I would do is cross out the zeros. And then I would try to think of what number goes into 414 and 36. After using a calculator, I figured out that both of these numbers are divisible by 18. So 414 divided by 18 is going to give me 23. And 36 divided by 18 is going to give me 2. And the pi is still part of the answer because, again, we are answering this in terms of pi. In this example, we're asked to find the arc measure of this region here that's colored in red. So we're going to use some different things that we know about angles to help us solve this. We're still going to look for the circumference first and then the arc measure and then set up our proportion. So first, let's start with the circumference. I can see here that the radius is 9, which means that the diameter must be 18. As for the arc measure, I can see here that they give me this 25 degrees. And since this forms that X shape that I know you guys have seen before, these are actually vertical angles. They're equal because they share this vertex. And since these angles are equal, I can assume that this arc and this one are also both 25 degrees. So that is the portion of my total that I'm going to use in my proportion. So I'm going to have X, which is the arc length that I'm solving for, over the total circumference, equals the portion that I was given over the total. Now from here, I am going to simplify and cross multiply as I've been doing. And then I get 25 times 18, which is 450. And the last step to get X by itself is to divide by 360. Now, of course, since I'm leaving my answers in terms of pi, I do want to simplify as much as possible. And I am going to start by crossing out these zeros. So 45 over 36, which does simplify. They are both divisible by 9. So 45 divided by 9 gives me a 5. And 36 divided by 9 gives me a 4. And in terms of pi, is still part of the final answer. So X equals 5 over 4 pi, or 5 pi over 4.